It's the day after Nigeria is celebrating 64 years of independence right here. And here's what we have prepared for you on this episode of Business Incorporated. We'll start all the way in Brazil, where that summit on energy transition is ending today. And yes, channels did join Nigeria in celebrating that 64th anniversary. We'll bring you excerpts from the forum. And right after reduction on India interest rate, Ghana's inflation hits up in September. Good afternoon. Welcome to the program. I'm Ini John Mekwa. We head straight to business. From the global space, oil prices were flat on Wednesday as a firmer dollar partially offset safe haven demand amid heightened Middle East tensions. We know that escalated yesterday, and investors are also awaiting U.S. data for further economic cues. Let's look at the numbers at this time. A lot of uncertainty in the market after, that attack from strikes from Iran to Israel. So we see Brent up a whole 1.13%. I have to tell you, when that news broke yesterday, Brent gained up to 3% in just a couple of hours. So $74.39 for Brent, while WTI gained also more than 1%, but at $70.71 a barrel. And of course, Israeli Prime Minister, in reaction to what happened yesterday, Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has promised that Iran would pay for its missile attack. So a lot of uncertainty, waiting to see what retaliation would look like. Also, dollar held its sharpest gain in a week. A stronger dollar makes greenback priced bullion more expensive for other currency holders. Market participants are also monitoring ADP employment data and remarks from several Federal Reserve officials. That's expected later on today from the United States, and of course would also feed into that. Now, other metals, we see spot silver was flat. Uncertainty still going there. Was spot gold unchanged. U.S. gold futures down 0.4, silver flat at $31.04, platinum up 1.2% to $997.30, and palladium also went up 1.6%, $1,010.35. Now, let's look at oil. Prices rose on Wednesday on fears of conflict in the Middle East again, that it will turn into a wider war and disrupt oil supply from the key producing region after Iran fired ballistic missiles at Israel. Brent futures gained 83 cents at 1.13% at $74.39. And also, you look at WTI, I think we already had that, yes. And Iran fired more than 180 ballistic missiles at Israel. Now, coming back to Nigeria, the Major Energy Marketers Association of Nigeria has asked that the federal government will concession existing refineries in the country. And the Executive Secretary of MERMAN, Mr. Clement Isong, told journalists that the approach would be the most effective way to enhance domestic refining capacity and also help meet the country's local fuel demand. He explains that the move would also attract private sector investment and improve operational efficiency refineries. And at the same time, he's saying that the encouragement of local refineries to adopt a toll refining model where all producers could refine their crude locally for a fee would also go a long way to help. Now, today, just a couple of hours ago, there was the end of that summit, which has been going on in Brazil. And the Director General and Chief Executive of Energy Commission of Nigeria, he's also the head at the G20 Energy Transition Working Group meeting. Dr. Mustafa Abdullahi is representing Nigeria, is there, and is asking for more intentional funding in the race to embrace renewable energy sources, with the estimate that Nigeria requires $410 billion to actualize the energy transition plan. Dr. Abdullahi says that then there's a need for actionable plans for implementation.
Our projected estimates have shown that Nigeria will require about about $410 billion to deliver the energy transition plan by 2060. In conclusion, it must be noted that finance is the key factor to a clean energy transition and is currently inaccessible by developing nations that need it most, particularly Nigeria. Africa is one of the most affected regions by climate change, and present funding for climate finance in Africa countries is inadequate. According to the African countries' nationally determined contributions, the continent reportedly required about $53 billion annually to transit to net zero, so between 2020 obviously and 2035. To achieve a just energy transition, countries like Nigeria plan its own energy transition that is specific to its country energy scenario.
All right, well, we're going to delve more into that energy transition and happenings within Nigeria's energy sector and energy security. But let's take a quick break. We'll be back. Welcome back to Watching Business Incorporated right here on Channels Television. And we're talking about the summit that just ended in Brazil, all about energy transition. Nigeria needs about $410 billion, according to forecasts, for a successful energy transition. But let's delve into that and other issues with right here in the studio, Mr. Tayo Douglas is Public Affairs Analyst. Good afternoon, Mr. Douglas, and thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much.
So energy transition is the new conversation, renewable energy and all of that. But one wonders if Nigeria should be having that conversation at this time. Should we be looking that way? Have we even stabilized with where we are using fossil fuel, which is supposed to be our strength, even though we now know that Nigeria has even more potentials in the gas area?
In the gas area. First of all, I would like to say it this way. The race for fossil fuel energy downsizing and the upload of renewable energy have been on for quite a while in most of the international worlds. It appears we are beginning to feel the impact. Why? Because the international campaign is saying something about carbon and all what's emission into the climate, and they discover it's having to do with the fossil fuel. No. In actual fact, and as far as almost 1940 something, some area in Sokoto State, in the present day Sokoto State, we had renewable energy in full swing there. It's because we lack the tradition of continuity, tradition of maintenance. That's why all these things are now becoming to look like a mirage to us. However, the energy transition is better handled in civilized climate, or most of the climes that have done a lot to advance its cause. It's not about the climate changes. It's not about preservation of the climate alone. It's having to do with our consumption of energy. You will discover the more we have a bloated population, the more our energy demand become increasing. Here in Nigeria, we've refused to take care of that expansion in population over the years. Where will these teeming millions of people growing every day per second, where will they derive energy? Where will they source energy? We've only relied on fossil fuel as our source of energy, which fossil fuel people are now condemning today as sending obnoxious gases into the climate and by and large depleting the layers and depleting the climate and all what have you. Nigeria has potentials of abundant renewable energy sources, which we have refused to source, which we have refused to tap. Most of the problem with us is having to do with what is the legislation, what is the law, what is the policy put on ground to make sure we can harness this source of energy. Quite sure we are lacking. We don't have it. We don't even know where to start. We don't even know the number of sources open to us. All what people are shouting is solar, solar. Solar is just a minuscule of renewable sources. Solar cannot attend to the needs of manufacturing company. Solar energy is meant to provide electricity and all what have you to light up your house, to light up the office premises. But when we talk about energy consumption, I think more should be done to look on the size of hydro green energy.
What about gas? I thought you were going to say gas.
Gas is considered to be part of the fossil fuel. It is not a renewable energy source. But however, our argument is that up till today, the foreign UN body that is saying that we are contributing to depletion of the climate here by using of gas and other fossil fuel, the oil. Are we so industrialized in Africa as opposed to the in advanced world? So gas, in essence, we still need it. The point must be made. We are not saying we don't need fossil fuel now. We still need it because we are at our teaching stage of development. Even China that are talking, China too depends on the fossil fuel. They depend on.
I mean, even in Europe, they have to go back to coal.
To coal.
Yeah, in the midst of the war. But because of time, some people have said that we are talking about renewables because the world is talking about renewables. But even going by what our practice now, we're using crude oil, and we're still having issues now. We have we're talking of local refiners, they can't get crude. We've seen the not so friendly relationship between Dangote and the regulators. We have other domestic crude refiners that are not able to access crude. So I mean, when we are not able to manage this well, what's the assurance that we should even move away from it?
Thank you. This problem of having to be looking elsewhere for solution while in fact we have the solution at our backyard is something that continues to puzzle every designer minds. Number one, subsidy. Subsidy that we continue to bloat and blow out of a proportion. Is it by way of money donation alone to whoever is producing a service or services rather? It's a kind of mechanism which many countries have deployed in life, and they have helped to keep the price of an item being manufactured in their country to the lowest level and affordable. Affordability and availability is what subsidy is all about. In other words, if somebody is saying, I put on a refinery here, government will be looking for a way. If we should allow this man to continue with his refinery, a time is coming when people will be buying his product, maybe 1 liter for almost 1,000 naira. Is this 1,000 naira affordable to my people? If the government feel no, it's not affordable and it's not acceptable, government will say, okay, can we put a kind of mechanism and process whereby this man will manufacture, he will keep manufacturing, but at the same time, the least of my people can afford to buy his product. That is what we call subsidy. It comes in many ways. Government, for instance, the much talk about refinery now, the Dangote Refinery Limited. We've read, we've known that government have put some certain things in places for him since the commencement of this regime. These are subsidy. Tax relief, foreign exchange, sourcing preferential allocation of foreign exchange, then crude oil in local currency, as opposed to buying in international.
So, in essence, are you saying that we need to put subsidy in the mix when we talk about Dangote petrol, or because we know there's subsidy already when you talk about petrol in the country?
Is already the local refinery here, as far as I'm concerned, the Dangote local refinery has been subsidized from ab initio since it started. Ask me why and how.
Why?
This one is refining in a Lagos free trade zone.
But he paid for that land, and he told us how much he paid for the land.
You don't ask government to give you that land free of charge. All what government is saying that even if in the midst of climate you create a free trade zones there, that is when the issue of waiver comes in. You have to start a business before you enjoy the perquisite of whatever you are establishing. Here he bought a land. What do you want to do on the land? I want to establish a refinery there. Oh, fantastic. Government is saying this is free trade zone. In other words, you are not allowed to pay tax. You are not allowed, you are exempted from some duties and all what have you. All these are subsidies. It isn't when you give somebody money.
So are you saying that Dangote petrol should be cheaper?
Oh, it should be cheaper by all standards, given the enormity of the subsidy that has gone into its.
But this is a business, and he does buy the crude at market price and all that. These are factors to consider.
Now, when you say business, then you will now have to tell us the meaning of subsidy itself, the English word for subsidy. This is saying that a mechanism put in place by government of a state to manufacturer to produce at an amount that will be affordable to his people, the people of the country. You have been subsidized. Farmers have been subsidized. In other clients.
Well, food is still expensive.
Not farmers are not subsidized in Nigeria.
Okay, I thought you were talking about the fertilizer and all of that.
Farmers are subsidized in abroad. In civilized world, farmers are subsidized. Why are they subsidized? So as to make whatever they are bringing out to be cheaper. Availability, that is the essence.
So I guess we have to ask Dangote petrol or refineries how much subsidy they are getting, before we can conclude this conversation. But I mean, we're out of time for this segment. Thank you so much, Mr. Tayo Douglas, Public Affairs Analyst, for your views on the program.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you.
Let's take a break now. When we come back, head to the market as well as other segments of the program. Just stay with us. back to watching Business Incorporated on Channels Television. We'll head to the markets now with Aniti Edits after 1 day of break for the Independence Day celebration.
Yeah. Any happy new month, especially for the start
Happy
of
new
a
quarter
trading
to
week.
you.
And a new trading week, a new trading month,
a new
trading quarter.
The first
final
trading
one.
day in a quarter.
Exactly. And of course, look at your board.
And we're starting with the red.
In the red, especially when we close in the green for Monday. But all right, so let's tell our viewers much more about Nigerian stock market. Yes, it ended the third quarter up by 2.1%. That's month to date. But year to date so far, the market is still in strongly positive territory, 31.8% year-to-date performance. And intraday, the number here, 98,531.64, not too far from where it stopped at Monday, 98,558.79. That was the number, but we see the impact of some profit-taking and some impact of bargain hunting market numbers still moving at intraday as we speak. And for the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, 0.65% in the green. Intraday, 87,180.81. And for the two other markets that we track here, the EGX as well as the NSE All Share Index, this is for Tuesday for the Nairobi Stock Exchange, 0.21%, and EGX 30, 1.05%, and that was as of last week, Thursday. So that's for the market that we are tracking, the stock markets. Of course, the negative opening for most of the markets, because we're going to be looking at most of the markets. Most of them are in the red. There are lots of issues going on around, from geopolitical reasons, geopolitical factors, as well as the impacts of investors being very wary about look out for third quarter earnings. But we'll be talking more about that later. But right now, let's take our attention more on the fixed income side of the market, where we're going to review, not really review, we've done the review, but let's take a look at what to expect in the month of October, as well as the fourth quarter of 2024. And we have James Adisa, financial market analyst with Chapel Hill Denham, to tell us more about that as we speak. Thank you for joining us, James.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so I have just one question for you, because we have to focus on other markets. Now, first, we saw the fixed income market, lots of activity within the month of September, as well as the whole of the third quarter. Now, what are investors to expect in the yields environment within the final 3 months of 2024?
Okay, so yeah, like rightly said, September was eventful, and we saw some policies by the central bank. I think overall the body language of the central bank indicates that it will be hawkish. But at the same time, we're also mindful of the fact that the DMO is trying to manage its cost of borrowing. And so over the next quarter, what our expectations are that, we would see yields trend downwards, possibly because, the DMO wouldn't be as aggressive in borrowing or money from the market over the next quarter. And this would support a bullish run or a bull trend in the fixed income market. This will also be supported by the fact that liquidity is expected to inflows into the system actually are meant to support strong liquidity. And that would also support buying interest in the fixed income market. So overall, our expectations are that, while the central bank remains hawkish, we would expect to see yields still remain somewhat suppressed or depressed running through the end of the year.
Okay, James, I think we'll leave it there and keep our eyes on how the market ends the first trading day of October for Nigeria's financial market. So thank you so much for your view on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
That was James Adisa, financial market analyst with Chapel Hill Denham, giving us details about the fixed income market. Okay, so take a look at the Middle East markets now. We see that the tension between Israel and Iran, following that barrage of several hundreds of missiles being fired from Iran into Israel, and that's causing some concern for global investors, particularly in the Middle East. You see the Dubai 0.95%, almost 1% down the last tracking at intraday, and the Abu Dhabi index 0.87%. And even speaking about the Abu Dhabi, we see that Abu Dhabi real estate recorded about $3.57 billion worth of mortgage deals in the third quarter, and this is because the transactions had hit about $15.1 billion so far this year. So far, the Abu Dhabi market, yes, at intraday we see that red coloring, but at the same time we saw some impressive performance within the third quarter, and still within the region there. We see, let's move over. Yeah, you see there, Saudi Arabia's Tadawul 1.44% down at intraday, still talking about that tension in between Russia, Israel, and Iran. And for the Qatari Stock Exchange, 0.68% down at intraday. Okay, so from the Middle East, let's go over to the United States, where it's also the stock futures are in the red. Take a look at the numbers there. 0.41% for the Dow Jones Industrial Average, 42,303.00 last tracking, and for the S&P 500, 5,736.75, also down. All the three major averages for the U.S. markets in the red. And of course, we are looking out. Investors will be looking out for Friday's jobs report, which is expected to give some clue into the state of the U.S. economy, as well as some other, at the same time, investors are also looking out for the start of the third quarter earnings season, which is expected to begin anytime from between tomorrow into next week. But let's have a review of how the markets ended for the close of Tuesday's trading session, and our correspondent, our Washington correspondent, Maria Bird, has details of that.
The U.S. stock market closed much lower on Tuesday after Iran fired 100 ballistic missiles at Israel. This has many wondering whether or not the global affairs will have an impact on the U.S. economy, as the Dow Jones was down at 0.4%, the S&P 500 down at 0.9%, and the heavy tech Nasdaq closed down by 1.5%. It is clear that many are concerned that the global affairs could have an everlasting effect on the U.S. economy, as Chairman Powell of the Federal Reserve has stated that he might not see an interest rate cut anytime soon. Many were expecting to see a quarter of a cut in November. This has many concerned about the U.S. economy and whether or not we will see any lasting effects.
Our Washington correspondent Maria Bird with the performance of Wall Street for the close of Tuesday's trading session. Okay, so take a look at the Asian markets. They've already closed Wednesday, and the close is mostly in the red. The Nikkei is also taking the biggest bashing, not the Nikkei, it has taken the biggest bashing there in terms of being in the red, 2.18% down, 37,808.76. But the biggest gainer that we see, if not the lone gainer there, is the Hang Seng Index, 6.20%, while the South Korea's Kospi down 1.22%. So on Tuesday, we saw that Japan has a new prime minister by the name Shigeru Ishiba, who took office following the resignation of the former prime minister. And of course, his extension could give the Bank of Japan more scope to raise interest rates further. So investors will be looking out for how that turns out for the Japanese market. And for Shanghai, actually, the country is closed for the rest of the week, for the Golden Week holiday. But this is the last track of the performance. They're 8.06% in the red at 3,336.50, while the India's stock market, Nifty 50, down by about slightly down 0.05% at 27,796.90. So we'll be looking out for how those markets will be opening. All the markets are still gauging what will be the response of Iran, and of course that will determine where the direction of the market would open or close for many parts of markets around the world. So, Amy, that's it for the markets.
Thank you so much, Anita. And obviously, that Middle East tension is what everybody is looking out for. Oil is looking out for it, and that directly affects Nigeria. Thank you so much for that. Now let's head to the UK, where our correspondent is in our London studio, Juliana Olayinka. But her prime minister is not around. I think he's in Brussels. And talking about trades and all of that, Juliana, good afternoon. So what can we expect from this visit of the prime minister?
Good afternoon, Innie. You're absolutely right. Sir Keir Starmer, embattled UK Prime Minister, is in Brussels today. He's actually supposed to be speaking right now at the dispatch box in the Palace of Westminster because, of course, Wednesday is PMQ days. But there's lots of business to be conducted in Europe, according to the statement from Downing Street this morning. So he will be having a meeting with the European Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen. And really, this is all about resetting those post-Brexit relations, which we're still doing 4 years after our tumultuous divorce. And it is still quite tumultuous. And I don't think it's going to be as easy as the Labour Party expected. This, of course, is just the second or I believe third visit that Sir Keir Starmer is having with a European Union leader since his historic victory. And really, it's all about trying to kind of cherry pick some decent deals now that we're no longer in the single market or the customs union. And it's not going to be easy. I think the body language that we've seen from previous visits, including his visit to Germany, where he spent time with Chancellor Olaf Scholz, and in Paris with French President Emmanuel Macron, I think they like Sir Keir Starmer. I think they appreciate the breath of fresh air and the statesmanship that comes along with his personality. However, during those 4 years of negotiations, I think Britain and the Conservative Party were really firm with their red lines. And I don't think Europe now want to kind of go back on some of the agreements that have been made. I think one of the major discussions that are going to take place today is this new youth mobility scheme. Of course, one of the main reasons why we left the European Union was to prevent the free movement of people. And not only is that going to affect migrants, that's also affecting people that want to live and work and study and tour both Britain and the European Union. But particularly when it comes to youth and studying and having access to both sides of the channel, that appears to be on the top of the agenda for the European Commission. I don't believe they have started speaking publicly yet. I think they're in a private meeting in Brussels at the moment, but there will be a joint news conference. And when we have that information, we'll bring it to you.
Yeah, we'll certainly get the details. I trust you to stay on that. But what are investors doing at this time in the UK?
But of course, all eyes are on the tension in the Middle East. America's just woken up. We're awaiting their response. I've just been listening to the White House correspondents. And, you know, there were fears that perhaps Israel would have retaliated following those missile attacks overnight from Iran. Of course, Iran being the center, well, one of the key stakeholders when it comes to geopolitics and oil. A barrel of Brent crude is significantly higher today. BP and Shell all leading the UK blue chip index at intraday. They all share in it. It's up 0.11%. FTSE 100 up to 0.18%. The FTSE 250, the domestic market, that's down though, 0.51%. I think there have been some local profit warnings, particularly by JD Sports. In the currencies market, the British pound is trading up against the US dollar by 0.11%, up to against the euro by 0.03%, and up against the Japanese yen by 0.79% at intraday. Innie.
All right, Juliana, thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day. Well, talking about Europe, looking at some economic news coming from there in the past week, looks like things are not going so well in Germany. There's trouble in the auto sector and the country's steel business. Just last week, we talked about that. Well, economists are looking at sharing their outlook for the country, and they say it's going downward. However, German shares are doing very well. What a contradiction. But let's get a balance now with Lars Holter. What's going on?
Thanks for having me, Innie. Well, today we're talking about ThyssenKrupp. That is the country's biggest steel giant, actually one of the oldest steel mills in the world. And maybe more importantly, it's a German industry legend dating back to the 1870s, a backbone really of the industrialization here. But there's been problems developing for a while, and the conglomerate's steel business just got a new CEO. And it's a rough start for him right from the get-go now. He told employees this past weekend that maybe major cuts will have to be made to improve the company's profitability. He says the current situation in steel markets has deteriorated more than even anticipated. And make no mistake, they did know, of course, that things weren't going great, but it just seems the situation is a lot worse than even recent numbers had shown. Now, the new CEO says that doesn't leave him much of a choice. He says he can't put a number on job cuts for now, but one thing he says is sure, in future, there'll be fewer people working at the company than today. That is, of course, not very detailed, but it definitely ruined many workers' weekend.
A strong market reaction, but what about the details in the companies?
Well, it's a bit of a triple whammy. First of all, we're dealing with high energy prices, and those are, of course, behind many of the current problems the German industry is having. Now, last, of course, because natural gas is more expensive than it used to be before Russia's war in Ukraine. Now, the steel industry specifically uses huge amounts of natural gas, and it does change the entire picture for the industry now, especially since there's two more developments. Cheaper steel has been coming in from Asia, so here's yet another business that is seeing more competition from countries that haven't really been competitors for a while. And while many are saying that Chinese steel is of lesser quality than ThyssenKrupp's product, for developers, of course, money talks. Oh, and we have another problem there, generally weaker demand, and that is in a large part due to weakness in the auto sector. That industry, of course, being a main buyer of steel.
Yeah, money talks indeed, but let's look at the investors and see what they are talking about.
Well, let's start with a look at Asia, where markets have been trading all day and mixed up in China after all that stimulus last week. So shares are continuing their rally, clearly indicating relief on investors' minds over the government finally stepping in and acknowledging that the Chinese economy is in duress and needed help. Then over in Japan, markets are down. Rumors there that the country's new Prime Minister, Shigeru Ishiba, wants the Bank of Japan to start normalizing interest rates. That, of course, after the country had extremely low rates for many years. Now, here in Germany, we'll be getting some fresh numbers on inflation, and later in the day, ECB President Christine Lagarde will have a speech. So some interesting economic points coming up.
Yeah, looking forward to that, Lars. Thank you so much. Well, let's come back to the continent now. We're beginning where the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has described Africa's debt situation as unsustainable and a recipe for social unrest. He was speaking at the China-Africa Cooperation Summit in Beijing, and he calls for deep reforms to the outdated, ineffective, and unfair international financial system. We know that was a major conversation at Onga. Well, our South Africa correspondent Innocent Semuta sent in this report.
The discussion on Africa's staggering debt burdens continues to shape global discourse. Recent statistics reveals that 25 African countries are dedicating at least 10% of their revenues to debt servicing. These countries find themselves in a precarious position, prioritizing debt repayment over essential services like health and education. Meanwhile, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa says debt is limiting Africa's growth and potential.
The world faces annual financing gap of some $4 trillion to achieve sustainable development. We call on better resourced countries to scale up their levels of support to developing economic countries.
Kenyan President William Ruto speaks about biased methodology in the financial sector.
Many countries in the global south are forced to choose between buying medicine and hospital equipment or paying their debt obligations, and between buying textbooks for school-going children or paying their debt obligations.
The pressing question is, how can Africa alleviate its debt burden? I recently spoke with Professor Denny Brandlow from the University of Pretoria, who recently published an article titled Easing Africa's Debt Burden, a fresh approach based on old ideas.
I mean, as you say, the burden of the debt is becoming overwhelming for many countries. The 23 countries in Africa that are spending more money on debts, servicing their debt, than they're spending on health or education. And so, the possibility of developing in that kind of situation is extremely difficult. And so we've been looking for a way that you could the countries could be given support to work their way out of that. And the idea, we had a two-part idea. One part, which is to create a mechanism, probably in the IMF, because they probably have the access to the resources to do this.
Professor Brandlow says as the international community grapples with these challenges, the G20's current approach under the common framework raises critical questions about the future development goals and financial sustainability for low-income countries. It is clear that addressing Africa's unsustainable debt situation is critical not only for economic stability but also for social cohesion. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Innocent Samos, Channels Television News.
Africa's issues common to a whole lot of countries, right there. We're still in Africa, where Kenya's annual inflation eased in September to the slowest pace in almost 12 years. And that's because of weaker growth in food and energy prices. Consumer prices rose 3.6% in September from a year earlier, the lowest since December 2012. The Kenya National Bureau of Statistics said that Nairobi, that it's down from 4.4% in August and below the 4.3% median estate of 4 economists. Prices claimed 0.2% on a monthly basis. The latest inflation print will influence the central bank's Monetary Policy Committee when it gathers on October 8th. The MPC surprised markets at its last meeting in August when it lowered Kenya benchmark interest rate for the first time in 4 years. At that time, the committee cited expectations for inflation in the near term to remain below 5%, midpoint at which Governor Kamal Thuge prefers to anchor price growth expectations. In North Africa, the Egyptian International Motors has announced plans to invest $100 million in establishing an automotive plant in Egypt. And the project will export 105,000 vehicles over the next 5 years and create 2,000 jobs, aiming to establish the country as a regional hub for vehicle manufacturing and exports. During a meeting between the Prime Minister, Mustafa Mudboli, and EIM officials, the company reviewed its efforts to localize the automotive industry, aiming to achieve 48% local components and increase this to 58% within the first year of production. The president emphasizes the government's full support for the automotive sector, particularly electric vehicle production, and directed immediate allocation of land for the factory. Moreover, the industry minister, Kamel Al-Wazir, confirms that the government's commitment to facilitate all necessary procedures to ensure that the project is a success. We're still in Egypt, where the foreign direct investment, that's the FDI inflows, has surged to a record $46.1 billion in full year 2023-2024. And that's compared to $10 billion in the past year. This was released by the Central Bank of Egypt. Now, the surge represents a growth of 361%, and it's largely driven by $35 billion Ras El Khaimah deal, which marks the largest FDI in Egypt's history. According to the data, the non-oil sector attracted $40.4 billion in net FDI inflows, while the oil sector attracted $5.7 billion. The Egyptian government also plans to offer 5 concessions for investors on the Red Sea, including Berenice and Ras Banas. And we're still talking about the Central Bank of Egypt. They have withdrawn 1.11650 billion Egyptian pounds from the market And they did this on Tuesday through an open market operation auction. The move is aimed at influencing interest rates and manage excess liquidity in the banking system. Bids from 28 banks were accepted at an interest rate of 27.75%. The CBE recently revised its bid acceptance policies to enhance the effectiveness of its monetary policy tools. As part of these revisions, the CBE has implemented full allotment system for its open market operations, and this allows all eligible banks to participate in weekly auctions, replacing the previous allocation-based system. These measures are part of CBE's ongoing efforts to manage liquidity and maintain interest rate stability in the interbank markets. Still talking about inflation and interest rate. Ghana's inflation is out just after they cut their interest rates. Well, inflation unexpectedly increased in September. This happening for the first time in 6 months, raising doubt about the policymakers' forecasts that price growth will ease further toward the end of the year. Consumer prices rose 21.5% from 20.4% in August. And the government statistician Samuel Kabina is also saying that the main driver of this increase is food prices again, according to the data that was released. And yes, we did promise to give you some clips from that Channels Forum, which was held yesterday. It was indeed a full conversation that we had. We had 3 segments looking at food security, energy security, and the ease of doing business. We promised to give you a more robust package this time tomorrow. Do bear with us. We will give you the report. And in case you did not see it live, it will be like you were seeing it live, but that'll be tomorrow, Thursday, Business Incorporated at 1 p.m. So do make a date with us. All right, now let's go to the crypto space. And Ladi could give you a bit of gist from that Channels Forum, but I don't think that's what is out here for today.
And definitely, if you miss the Channels Forum, you can also go to our YouTube channel and you can get all of the summaries right there. But we're still going to get that.
Yeah, we put together the highlights for you because, I mean, it was about 3 hours, 45 minutes, almost 4 hours. I'm sure a lot of viewers do not have the patience.
There's so much to unpack.
Yeah, a lot. And
we put it down.
We'll put it down for you in the report, but also we do have the segments, cut out there. So, I mean, you should go to our website. And then tomorrow we'll give you the highlights, during Business Incorporated right here.
I'm talking about highlights. Bitcoin is down.
It's a red light.
It's a red light.
Is this the Middle East tension?
Exactly. Yeah, we saw oil markets react positively with the price going up.
But it's a flip for
risk assets such as Bitcoin, Ethereum. Red is the color there, full on red. Then we see the hamster token. Yeah, that's after listing last month. It's down about 54% post listing. So now it's all eyes are on X Empire. That's listing some point this month. And we see the developers of the game saying it's time to wrap up the first phase of the journey. And they're telling most of their players that if you played, you're definitely going to be rewarded according to your effort, put into the game. So all eyes now on X Empire, but some players already burnt from other games like Hamster Combat, where they got dust for their work. So who knows if this is going to give dust, but we'll definitely find out. And we see Bitcoin ETF outflows exactly once there's some bad news in the market. We see the outflows from the Bitcoin ETFs, and that happened yesterday with Bitcoin and Ethereum dropping in price. Then we see Bitcoin September mining revenue that dropped compared to the previous month. So most of the revenue that these miners get from mining Bitcoin, we see that dropped about $1,816 million in block rewards from the month of September. Also noting a significant slowdown of fees. So definitely not looking so profitable for most of those miners. That's for September. Let's bring in Olumide Adesina now, financial market analyst. Hello, Olumide.
Hello, Ladi. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Olumide. So we're still seeing sell-offs with the hamster token, and we're seeing the next one on the block, that's X Empire. The developers are saying they're going to do better. They're going to be transparent with their distribution. They're giving about 70% to the players. That's for X Empire. So how are you seeing all of these airdrops? It seems once they just hit the market, it's just sell-offs.
Ladi, to be honest with you, I think there's a premium on risk. You could see how the crypto market is reacting to the crisis in the Middle East, and that tells you that investors don't see crypto assets as safe haven, despite 100% uptick in gold prices. So it really categorically tells you that there's a positive correlation between risk and the crypto market. And that really raises concerns on the heightened geopolitical uncertainty around the world. Also, you look at the Amstar performance, it highlights the fact that the mimic assets have not been able to bring out a success after Notcoin. And pretty much it boils to three things. First, the tokenomics is quite complicated, rewarding having a strong reliance on pay-to-earn without a strong investor base. The liquidity investment in that asset is not so strong, despite the fact that there's a high presence of community. Then you look at the country exposed to these games. These games are not listed in the United States. Citizens are not allowed because these assets are treated as security assets. Major parts in Europe. So you are left with places like Africa, Asia, and emerging markets, which categorically don't have the liquidity that we see in traditional market. I think my outlook for the fourth quarter this year, I think, is neutral because despite the fact that a Trump win will push Bitcoin to probably six figures, the situation around the Middle East and the uprising in the dollar market, dollar index, tells you that all might not be well. And if you look at the year-to-date of Ethereum, despite ETF inflows, it has been disappointing. But Bitcoin has been able to bring in 40% this year. So I think it's a wait-and-see approach, and I think the bets are still on Bitcoin.
Right, and still talking about Middle East tension right now, do you see some kind of black swan event loading that would impact risk assets like Bitcoin in this year into 2025?
Most likely, Ladi, most likely. A Israeli retaliation definitely will hit up the more important region. Bitcoin might really fall below the 50,000 mark. And that's pretty much, you could see that there were outflows and liquidation in the crypto market when the Iranians launched about 180 ballistic missiles. So the Middle East definitely will be a strong indicator. But I think the decider this year will be the US election. You could see that Trump announced a crypto project which already created some fanfare and criticism. A win from Donald Trump would definitely give the crypto market some support.
Okay.
But compliance is becoming a very strong issue. You could see that Binance right now have started tagging altcoins that are changing their tokenomics. So I think the regulatory space is already maturing in the digital space.
Right. Thank you so much, Olumide Adesina, financial market analyst. Always great having your perspective. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
So, there you have it. Olumide says there's a possibility there could be some kind of, black swan event with what we're seeing with escalation in the Middle East. There's retention there. But at the end of the day, it seems maybe the shorters might be the ones having fun if all of this plays out.
Yeah, well, I guess everybody will just be watching because you do have a mix of this Middle East and then the positive sentiment coming from the Trump and the election, the United States election, So, I mean, as he said, watch and see.
So much to watch out for.
Thank you so much, Ladi. Well, that's it on the program today. Thank you so much for being a part of Business Incorporated. A new episode will come to you tomorrow. And don't forget, tomorrow we'll give you highlights of the Channels Forum event that was yesterday. Very interesting conversations. You don't want to miss it. So until then, do have a great day or rest of it.